Today I'll be interviewing Julia Goldman. Julia, can you give me a little bit of a brief bio before we start?
Yes, I'm Julia. I'm 23 years old. I studied psychology. I'm in my master's now, clinical psychology, and yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Okay, awesome. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about existentialism. So throughout the semester of my philosophy course, I've been studying solely existentialism. It's basically a philosophy about how humans create their own meaning in life. It's how we deal with freedom, death, and responsibility. So for my final project, I need to interview someone and connect their real life experiences to the ideas we've been reading about. There are no right or wrong answers here. I'm just really interested on how you think about these things. I'll explain each idea before I ask the question, so nothing will come out of the blue. Okay, does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Okay, so first I want to get a sense of who you are outside of university. So first question is, outside of school and your career path, is there something you do that's purely for yourself? Something where you're not being evaluated or work towards a credential, you just do it because it means something to you.
Yes, what I really love to do is sports. Currently, mostly running and biking and swimming. And every time I do it, I realize how much it fulfills me and how much it gets me out of my head. And it's just something I really do just for fun, especially with biking.
Okay. Do you think that thing would mean as much to you if you were forced to do it? Like if it became an obligation instead of a choice?
That would definitely change something. As a kid, I had a lot of hobbies as well. And at first, I really wanted to do it, like playing the violin, playing the piano. And especially with the violin, I also went to an orchestra. Like when I grew up and got older, it was more something that my mom forced me to do instead of something I actually wanted to do, and that like really changed everything about it. And now I'm really struggling to pick that hobby up again, and I completely stopped it when I got out of school. So yeah, that definitely had an impact on how much I enjoyed it.
Okay, that's interesting. So thinking more big picture about where you're headed now, when you imagine your life in 10 years, what does a good life look like to you? And is that picture more about what you've accomplished professionally, or is it about how your everyday life feels to you?
Definitely how my everyday life feels. I think like what I do as a job is definitely going to matter because it's so much of my time that goes into it. But in general, like just doing things that like fulfill me and that I really enjoy, that's gonna make my life a happy life.
Okay, so you're really interested in like a work-life balance, for example.
Yes,
Okay, so if you had to sacrifice one, either your career fulfillment or your personal fulfillment, which one would you give up? And what do you think that tells about you as a person?
that's a tricky question, especially if my career is linked to like affording life, because I will need money, and it also depends on how much time my career like needs in my everyday life. Like if it's every day 8 hours of my day, like what I do for my career,
Mhm.
then that's gonna matter a lot more than if it's only a part-time job and I still have a lot of time for everything else. Um, so yeah, that's like really important to answer this question. But in general, if I am not dependent on my job as like a money provider, then definitely like the personal part. I think I lost track of the question a little bit.
Okay, let's just imagine there's no more money in the world. Um, you either have your fulfillment through your career or your fulfillment through personal experiences not linked with your career. Which would you choose if there was no money?
Then definitely the personal.
Okay. So I'm gonna dig back deeper into maybe like a hard decision you've had to make in your life. Has there ever been a decision where no matter what you choose, you would lose something? Maybe not a decision with a right or wrong answer, but one where every option had like a cost.
Mm, and that's not that easy to answer. I would say like every decision kind of comes with something I get and something I lose. Like when I decided to do my master's, I didn't get in at first, so I was waiting for a very long time. And I was looking for internships, and I already thought, okay, it's not gonna work out. I'll just wait a year, and that was fine for me. I just like made peace with that decision and applied for internships, and I got like further into the process, and it all sounded really interesting, and I could really imagine myself doing those internships and moving to another city that I thought was cool. And then I did get in, super last minute, and I had to decide: am I going to take it, or am I going to stick to the new plan I made and go through with the internship? And that was definitely a hard decision to commit to the studies, because that meant moving to a completely different city that was very far from everything I knew, and also a city I didn't like particularly wanted to live in. So I gave up like living in a big city that sounded exciting to me, working in an internship that was, yeah, sounding great, and committing to those studies, which I thought I wanted to do more. Yeah.
Okay, so that sounds like a really difficult decision. But based on this decision that you made, do you think when you made it, you were basing your decision on who you were at the time or who you wanted to become after you made the decision?
Probably more who I wanted to become, because by the time I made the decision, I really didn't, I wasn't as passionate about clinical psychology as I am now. When I'm like now, I'm almost done with my master's. At that time, I was like, I just finished an internship in corporate, and I did see myself there. I saw a lot of advantages. The internships were in corporate, and maybe it would have been good to take a break and just do something different for a year, and then like really commit to the studies, because at that moment I want to. But back then, I definitely made this decision for my future, because I saw it more as like a long-term career path I would see myself in.
Okay. So these hard decisions, what do you think is harder? Do you think it's the decisions that you made, or maybe the ones that you avoided making?
Mm, do you mean this particular decision, or in general this decision?
Just in general, yeah.
And then can you repeat the question again?
So do you think the hardest decisions are the ones that you make, or maybe the ones that you avoid making?
Oh, probably the ones I avoid making.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start bringing in some philosophers that we've been reading in the class now. I'll give the idea first of what they are trying to say and how it connects to your life. So don't worry about knowing anything about philosophy. I'm just solely interested on your honest reaction to these ideas. So the first philosopher we're going to be talking about is Nietzsche. So you talked about your hard decision in choosing your master's program in a city that maybe you weren't particularly happy about going into. And Nietzsche has a really interesting take on where our values actually come from when we make these decisions, for example. So the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, he argued that for a long time, people relied on religion and tradition to tell them what's right and what's wrong, instead of figuring it out for themselves. So in The Gay Science, he writes about a madman who runs into a marketplace and he shouts that God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of murders? Nietzsche's point isn't that we literally killed God or that God is dying. It's about the idea that modern society has moved past the old religion and moral authorities that used to make our decisions for us. And now we're kind of left with the terrifying responsibility of creating our own values. Can you think of a time where you had to make a decision based on your own values rather than what your family, culture, or society expected of you? And what was that experience like for you?
Mm, hmm. Oh, that's not that easy. I would say growing up, there was a lot of like expectations from my family, especially when it came to like being good at school, having good grades, being good at playing the violin, the piano, everything, looking like looking impressive from the outside. And there was a time where it shifted for me. Like I was always trying to live up to the expectations and also like exceeding in them. But then by like seventh grade, I didn't see that as something I wanted anymore. So I started to like stop and be rebellious and do things that my mom didn't approve of, like going to parties or staying out or skipping school, stuff like that. Does that like fit to the question as a situation?
Okay. So when you made these decisions where you were maybe defying against your parents or doing something because maybe you wanted to or because maybe your mom wouldn't like it or your dad wouldn't like it, do you think you were making these decisions purely from your own moral compass, your own they were your own decisions, or were they coming from maybe an external source, maybe people from school or people you saw online? Do you think they were completely your own decisions, or do you think there was some external guidance when you made them?
Definitely also some external guidance. Like it was something that my friends did, so I wanted to do it, and I knew that my mom wouldn't approve of them, so I did it. More like in that kind of way.
Okay. And do you think that there's maybe a difference between choosing to follow a tradition because you genuinely believe in it, or versus following it because it's easier for you to decide for yourself?
There is for sure a difference. Um, the second option is just like easier. I think it's really hard to have something and then just follow it just because you want it and not because of any like external sources. I would say the external part always like matters a little bit at least.
Okay. So Nietzsche's saying that we create our own values, but we read about another philosopher. His name is Kierkegaard, and he takes that idea a little bit further. And he asks us, how do you actually commit to anything when you can never be completely sure about it? So the philosopher Soren Kierkegaard, he talks about the idea that some of the most important decisions that we make in life can't be fully worked out with logic or with evidence. At a certain point, you just have to commit and jump into it. He describes humans as being in constant tension. He writes that man is a synthesis of infinite and finite, of the temporal and the eternal, of the freedom and the necessity. His point is that we are just limited beings who reach toward things bigger than ourselves. We reach for relationships, for careers, for beliefs, and we can never fully resolve that tension. We can never have complete certainty before making a very big decision. We only really understand our choices after we've already made them. So, with that in mind, talking about like a leap of faith, quote unquote, have you ever taken a leap of faith? maybe committed to a relationship, a career path, or a move to a new place without being completely sure it would work out? And what pushed you to jump?
Yes, I would say there's been a lot of times, like, for example, the situation I mentioned earlier with moving to the city and starting this master program, which was like both really new and big. And then this place was so far from everything I knew and in a different part of Germany. Also, the internship I did before that, like just moving to Berlin for 4 months and settling in this huge city, and making friendships, but knowing that it's only for like this time and not forever. That was all like something that was really hard, but also really fulfilling because I learned that it's always gonna work out, and I can always like find a way that I'm comfortable and like build a life that I really like, even though the circumstances change or are difficult at the beginning.
Okay, so you find situations uncomfortable, maybe this leap into the unknown. You maybe find a little bit of comfort in it.
Yeah.
Okay, so being on the other side of these decisions, maybe taking the job in Berlin or moving to Trier, being on the other side of that, do you understand it differently than you did at the time?
Mm, you mean like now looking back at it
Now looking back at
as
it, yeah.
the decisions themselves?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, it's always like different because I already know that it worked out. And especially with Trier, I'm surprised how much it changed like throughout the process and how I look back at it now. Because when I just moved there, I really hated it, and I didn't like it that much. And also the master program, it took me super long to actually enjoy what I'm doing, and I would say it didn't happen until the last semester that I spent there that I like genuinely enjoyed it and thought, wow, this is really interesting. I'm so glad I'm doing this. I'm so grateful that I can do it. And yeah, now looking back, I really like it, and I was kind of sad to leave. Um, yeah, and that was like so different when I first moved there. So I probably would have never thought how much I actually like found a home there.
Okay, I'm really glad it worked out for you. So we've been talking about making choices and taking leaps, but what about when none of it seems to matter? There's a philosopher named Camus who tackles this very idea head on. So Albert Camus, he describes something he calls the absurd. It's the idea that as humans, we desperately want life to have meaning, to have order and justice, but the universe just doesn't give us any of those things. He uses the myth of Sisyphus as a example of this. It's a man condemned by the gods to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity, only for it to roll back down every single time he reaches the top. So he uses this as a metaphor for the human condition. At the end of the essay, Camus writes, "The struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy." His argument is that even when life feels pointless, the act of persisting and owning your own struggle is where meaning actually comes from. So everyone has moments where things feel meaningless or where you question what the point of all of this is, what the point of life is. What keeps you going during these times? Where do you find your reason to keep pushing the rock up the hill?
Definitely the people around me, like my friends, my partner, my family. Um, like no matter how bad everything is going or how much I question the decisions I make, that's like always a constant that I can rely on, and like the support or just people who are there who I can talk to about everything. That's what matters the most. And if those relationships are still there and going well and I feel like comforted, then I know that like everything will be good.
Okay. In your day-to-day life, maybe on a regular basis, do you find yourself asking these questions about what the meaning is, what the reason we're all doing here is?
Not in particular.
Okay. So you're not super overthinking everything. Do you think that maybe might be an answer in its own? Just living rather than searching for a reason?
Yeah, I like if I imagine constantly wondering like about all these questions, I think that would really stress me out. And I remember when we like talked about these kind of questions and topics before, I was really confused that you said you wonder about them like on a day-to-day basis, and I've never really thought about it in depth. Um, and I never felt like the need to. And just imagining like doing that, I think that would really stress me out and make me question a lot more things instead of just doing them.
Okay. Okay. So Camus in the myth of Sisyphus, he is talking about finding meaning for yourself. But we learned about another philosopher. His name was Sartre. And he asks a very different question. He asked, how much of you actually comes from other people? So Jean-Paul Sartre wrote a book or a play called No Exit. And it's where three dead people are trapped in a room together in a sort of hell. There's no torture devices, no fire or stabby sticks. They just torture each other by just being there. One of the characters, Estella, has a mental breakdown because there's no mirrors in the room. She says in the play, when I talked to people, I always made sure there was a mirror nearby in which I could see myself. I watched myself talking, and somehow it kept me alert, seeing myself as the others saw me. Sartre's point in this isn't that Estella is vain. It's that part of her identity only exists through how other people see her. Without the outside gaze, she doesn't even know who she is anymore. Is there maybe an area in your life where how other people see you significantly shapes how you see yourself? Maybe in university or in your relationships, in your family, where does other people's perception carry the most weight?
In general, I would say I am someone who does care a lot about how people think about me, but mostly like people I care about. And one thing that I realized in a lot of situations is how much it matters to me to be a good friend and how my friends see me. And if they would agree that I'm a good friend to them. And that's something that definitely like matters in what I do and how I do it. Like trying to be a good friend to my friends and a good partner in my relationship, of course.
Of course. Um, okay, so have you ever had a moment where you tried to maybe push back against how someone defined you? For example, earlier you said your mom really pushed you towards the violin and you kind of pushed back against her in your own way when you were a kid. But can you think of any other decisions that you made that you had to push back a little bit because maybe someone was defining you in a way that you didn't want to be defined?
Hmm. There's nothing that comes to my mind immediately.
Hmm. Okay, we can kind of shift. So I want you to imagine really quick that you accomplished something that you were really, really proud of, but no one found out about it. There was no recognition, no feedback, nothing. You never got any of it. Would it feel like the same kind of accomplishment for you?
That is a good question. It probably wouldn't. Like every time I achieve something, I do realize how much I need external approval to then accept it for myself as like as an accomplishment. For example, when I ran my marathon last year, my first marathon, I was so much on social media and checking my Strava and like looking at what other people say to it, comparing my time to like things I saw online. And the more I saw like how other people did, the less I could see my own achievement as like an achievement. And I needed other people to tell me, no, what you did was really good and you can be proud of that. Like if that wouldn't have been, it was like way harder for me to just accept it.
Okay. Yeah, no, I completely understand that. Okay, so one last question, and I say this one specifically for you because it directly ties into kind of what you're studying now. So back to Camus. He also wrote a novel called The Plague, and it's about a city that gets quarantined during a extremely deadly epidemic. One of the main characters is a doctor. His name is Rix, who keeps showing up and treating patients every day, even though he knows that he can't actually stop the plague. When someone suggests that he is doing it and being heroic, he pushes back and he says, "There's no question of heroism in all of this. It's a matter of common decency." That's an idea which may make some people smile, but the only means of fighting a plague is common decency. His point is that you don't fight hopeless situations because you're going to win or because you're a hero. You do it because it's the only honest response to what is in front of you. As someone going into clinical psychology, you're going to be working with people who are struggling. And sometimes the outcomes aren't going to be what you hope for. Sometimes you won't be able to cure everyone. What keeps you committed to that kind of work, even when it feels like the odds are maybe against you? Do you see it in the same way that the doctor does, as simply the decent thing to do, or is there something else that drives you?
That's kind of hard to answer because so far I haven't actually like worked for a longer time with patients and like went through like a whole therapy with them. Um, so I don't know how it feels if all the efforts you put in like actually don't result into anything and the person is still as well like as sad as before. But like if I put myself into that position and it's something that I'm definitely gonna have to deal with, I would say yeah, like just expecting or having like a like knowing that this is like normal and that it can happen, like already mentally preparing for this outcome is something that's gonna help. And then like probably the little things like the patients where it was successful or when I realized after working on a problem with someone and then there's actually progress and that person like feedbacks that to me, that's gonna help a lot, I think. But in general, I see when I get into that situation, I would say,
Okay.
and just go into it with uh like good perspective.
Okay, so maybe looking forward to when you do step into that clinical psychologist role, do you think there could be a danger in attaching too much meaning or purpose to the work? Could that make it
Definitely.
maybe harder when things didn't go well?
Definitely. If I see my own success as a therapist in only like how many patients are completely cured after, that's definitely not gonna work out well for me, not for me and not for my patients. It is really important to have like general hope in my work that it's gonna work out. But there is patients where psychotherapy is just not the right thing, or maybe their motivation is not there. There's so many factors that lead to like a successful therapy, and only basing it on me and my work is just not gonna work. Like it doesn't make sense. But in everyday life, probably it's really hard to not just do that. And I'm a really critical person. I always like look for things that maybe didn't go that well or that I could do better. So it's definitely something I have to keep in mind, not to do too much and not to put myself under too much pressure when it comes to it.
Okay. Well, that's everything for the interview. I really appreciate you doing this with me. Your answers were really good, and I'm really excited to kind of connect them more to the course material in some interesting ways. Yeah, it was really good. Was there maybe anything that surprised you or made you think about something differently?
I definitely like really enjoyed the questions and thinking about them. There's a few that I probably am gonna think about throughout the day. I already caught myself thinking about my answers and what I could also have said, or like that comes to my mind now. So yeah, a lot of things. I think I just have to process them and think about it more.
Of course. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.